Welcome back to the channel. This week on the Kiwi Barefoot Gardener, we look at the pros and cons of raised beds. Are they worth the money or not? We do a wee skip back in time and look at the summer care of strawberries. And we get into some succession sowing so that we can keep the veggies growing over the season. Come potter with me in the garden. My name is Dawn and I am the Kiwi Barefoot Gardener. Last week I did a little section on summer care of strawberries, but when I was editing up last week's vlog, it was way too long, which is something I'm struggling with at the moment, trying to keep the vlogs a reasonable length. So I've kept it over to this week, so if it seems like it's out of time, that's why. So I hope this wee section is helpful on summer care of strawberries. Good afternoon. Well, it is Monday, the 1st of December, and if you're like me, you count the seasons by the months, so I tend to go December, January, February as summer. It's summer, and while it's cloudy now and a bit cooler, which is I'm really thankful, it was really warm this morning, so I wanted to get out into the backyard and do a few things, but it was a bit hot earlier, so I am now out here. I think it's about 3:30 in the afternoon, and what I thought we'd do today is, because it's a chore I need to do, is do a bit of summer care for the strawberries. So as you can see, the strawberries have done really well. These are second year strawberries, so yeah, I would expect them to be quite good. Yeah, a lot of leaf, but a lot of flowers as well. So it's really easy to overfeed your strawberries with stuff that might be a bit heavy in nitrogen, so you get lots and lots of leaf growth and very little flowers. But if you're getting the flowers as well, and I'm certainly getting the flowers, I'm pretty happy with the balance of the feed that I'm giving them. The new watering system's working well, just plugging it in and doing it roughly about twice a week at the moment, roughly. Just depends on how hot it gets. And as far as fruit, well, I've been picking fruit for a wee while now, but on average I'm getting 2 to 3 white colanders full of strawberries. So processing them up and getting them into the freezer because I want to make a big batch of not fresh strawberry, but homegrown strawberries jam this year. Last year I didn't get a lot. They were first year strawberries. It was a cooler summer, so I got a couple of flushes, but yeah, they didn't seem very happy with the wet, cool, damp summer. But this year we're rocking. So what summer care do you need to do? Well, other than watering and feeding, it is really good to tidy up in underneath the foliage, because as the bottom leaves die and what have you, they can become a focus for bugs and also, wet, mucky, fungus type stuff. So you want to keep them clear so that your fruit, if it is hitting the bottom, along the bottom of your strawberries there, then they can stay nice and edible looking. Yeah. Now, I fed these late last week because I was watering. One of the other things about picking your fruit, it's always better to do just before you water. It means that the sweetness is a bit more concentrated. So if you water them and then pick them, say 6 hours later, they might be a bit watery in taste. Nice, but watery in taste. So we've fed them. That's good. I just used sheep pellets this time, and they've been watered, so that's the good things. One of the things you can do too, and I've taken mine off, is of course netting them to stop the birdies get them. But I've got so much growth here that the few I'm losing to birds isn't really a problem. I'm just letting the birdies have them. plus the foliage was pushing the net off, and I don't have hoops that are big enough to lift them right off, so the net right off. So the next thing is to just have a look at what we're going to do today is just clean up and tidy up underneath, and I'll show you what I mean in a sec. Okay, so I've brought you in really close, and camera might be a bit of an odd angle. Hopefully it's not too weird for you, but you can see all this dry stuff. Now I need to clean all that up. Sorry about the noise. And any strawberries that I've missed are just to focus for. As you can see, that one's starting to go a bit white in bits. Yeah, so I just need to do a really good clean up in here, and just make it a bit cleaner and tidier. The wool matting is lasting well, and as I said, the watering system seems to be working well. I run it for roughly about an hour just to soak right through. So I'm going to clean these up, and then we'll come back to it once I've done it. So I've cleaned that area up. It can be quite time consuming trying to get in and around the base of the plants and cleaning the stuff out. A wee bit of debris there, but that's nothing. So I'll keep moving along and getting a bit more done of this. This will probably take me a couple of days because I've got to stand to get the back ones, and it can be a bit hard on the old back after a while. So I'll do it in little hits so I get through it all. Yeah, pretty happy with that. Nice tidy up. As you can see, lots and lots of flowers and fruit starting, and loads more over there. Yeah, so should be strawberries for Christmas. Now, as I said, these are second year's strawberries, and while I could leave them for another summer, this winter I will be lifting them. That's my normal. I lift them every second year, split them, and dispose of the extras. So yeah, that'll be my plan, depending on the way the winter goes, but probably around about June-ish, maybe even July. We'll see. But you'd be surprised how much I cleaned out of just that small area. I've got a half bucket of stuff there. That will just go into the compost, so that's fine. But yeah, it can build up quite a lot there. But yep, come winter, we'll go through splitting them and how to replant them and get your bed ready and what have you. It's good to do it every second year if you've got raised beds like I have, because you can rejuvenate the soil. You can, like me, I can put more wool matting down, even though that's relatively new because I did it this year. Usually I only do it every second year, but because it was such a wet, damp, yucky summer last year, my wool matting had gone a bit rank. It was horrible. It had gone all mouldy and green and slimy, so it had to come up. So that's why I've got the new stuff, but I've still got plenty of the roll from that I bought, and if any of it's still good, I'll use it. I'll just maybe use it as the base layer to fill in things like that. But I need to go and get tea sorted, so I will leave it here for now, and I'll catch up with you later in the week. Good morning. Well, it is Wednesday the 10th of December. Christmas is rapidly approaching, but over and above Christmas, I want to talk about raised garden beds today. So as many of you will know, my garden is predominantly raised garden beds. I only have one area that isn't a raised garden bed, and that is an area that's near my front door, which was done when we designed the house, and it's the hardscaping, and that was done before all my back issues. So the history of raised beds comes back from medieval times, where they used natural products such as wattle to make them, and then they evolved over the years and were seen in the early Parisian times more as manure beds and things like that, so raised manure beds. So they became popular again in around about the 1970s, when they were used to reduce the amount of room that you needed and the amount of soil. So they became really popular around then. One of the things that gave them a bit of a kick start was the concept of what they called at the time square foot gardening, and the use of a specific soil mix that was meant to be able to boost the growth of your plants, and you were able to get a lot more in a small area. With that contemporary boom of the raised beds came a combination or a merger of the Eastern European concept of hygge culture. I always pronounce that wrong, sorry guys. Hygge culture. So that's the use of burying wood or wood products, things like branches and what have you, at the bottom of your bed, whether it be a raised bed or a mound bed or anything like that, and using the decomposition of that wood to actually add to the warmth and the nutrients of that bed. And while the concept of no-dig gardens was started by Charles Dowding as an in-ground thing, and he prefers to continue that as an in-ground thing, using the no-dig concept with the raised bed gardens has become quite popular, and it does work. I do it, and I started it because of the arthritis in my hands and things like that, so it's been a real boon to me. So what are the pros and cons of raised bed gardening? Well, the pros are that you have a better control of your soil quality because you can keep adding and adding to the soil in your confined space. And as I said, I use the no-dig method, so I just add compost at least once a year, sometimes twice a year depending on what I've been growing, and I try and use predominantly my own compost, which I'm now getting to a point where I can do probably about half of my own compost each year on my beds. The rest is commercial bought stuff. One of the other main concepts is better drainage, so definitely for my front garden, having the raised beds has been a real bonus because the actual native soil, there's quite a solid clay pan underneath the soil that we had put on to be able to produce a lawn initially. But now that we've got the raised beds, it's great, and it really came into its own this last winter because our front garden was just a quagmire, despite the fact that we've actually had also, at the time of putting everything in, the original soil and the grass and what have you, we had French drains put in to help drain that water away. This winter being super wet, it just didn't manage it. And having had planted things like my fruit trees, having them in the raised beds meant that their roots were way above the water table and meant that they weren't going to rot out. So that's a really big bonus as far as that's concerned. So the drainage is for soggy soils and what have you is a bonus. So one of the other things is that in raised beds of any sort, the soil actually warms up quicker than the in-ground soil. So you, in theory, can plant earlier direct sowing for your crops or your flowers or whatever you want. Another bonus is ergonomics, depending on how big or tall you want to make your beds. Now, for me personally, that's the reason, one of the big reasons I have them, is that means that because I can't bend over and get to the ground and what have you, I need to be able to work on my beds. Now, to be practical, I can't have them at standing height because that would just be way too big. But I designed my bed so that I could sit in a camp chair, which like this one, and just sit and garden. And when you're making them, you just need to be aware not to make them too wide so that you can reach across easily. So the standard raised bed so that you can reach across should be no wider than 1.2 metres. And you can make them as long as you want, but you just need to be reasonable in that too, because you do need to be able to walk around them and you don't want to be walking metres and metres and metres. Now, I do have a really long bed in my front garden, which we're sitting in at the moment. I'm trying to hide under one of the peach trees for a bit of shade because it's warm. Now, that's a really long bed, the whole length of the front of my property minus the driveway, etc. And it is a pain in the neck to walk around to the far side, but I did that as a form of fencing, as you like to say, just to demarcate the boundary of our property. And it was a really nice way of doing it without great big palings or anything like that. So it works for it. We are in an area that we share a long drive, so it's not like out on the main road. For some people, raised beds help save space. I'm not convinced on that, but if you've got a garden that maybe you want to do a courtyard or something like that. For me, I've never done it for space saving, but I'm sure that can do that. It'd be good to hear if anyone's used them for that reason. And with that space-saving concept, of course, you've got the aesthetics. And as you know, if you have a small courtyard and you want a raised bed around it, it gives you a defined space, that sort of thing. And as like with my big long bed out the front, that's my version of a fence. So and it's a living border between my property and other people's property. Now, the cons of having a raised bed garden, they're expensive. Okay, yes, you can make raised bed gardens using pellet wood and things like that. Not a problem. You can get them free. Often in light industrial areas, you'll see areas that they've got their unused pallets or damaged pallets out on the side on the curb for anyone to grab free. All good, and you just need to make sure that you get a pallet that hasn't been treated, the wood hasn't been treated with any nasty chemicals. And if you just go onto a website and type in using pallets for raised bed gardens, there'll be a heap of information about what sort of pallet to get and what not to get. So yes, you can do that. And look, there's some amazing raised bed gardens made out of pallets. There's amazing things made out of pallets. But generally, the pallet type garden doesn't have a lot of longevity for it. So if you're going to do a raised bed garden that you want a reasonable amount of longevity from, which is what I've done, I've used macrocarpa sleepers. And in the back garden, I've used macrocarpa sleepers that are 10 by 20, so they're 20 high and 10 wide. In the front garden, I was having to be a bit more economical, and I used them on the big long beds. I'm pretty sure I used 5 by 20, so they're 5 wide, and then put a capping rail along the top just to give it that visual impression of them being wider. I'm not sure that I'd do a capping rail again, or if I did, I'd place it differently so that it wasn't sitting on the middle and that you had that wee shelf underneath, because I find the damn weeds get in underneath there and I'm forever pulling them out, especially the thistles. So wood, good wood that will last long time is expensive, and that is a huge con for a lot of people, because it's a garden. You're not wanting to pour a huge amount of money into your garden unless you're really going for a concept type thing. But so that's the biggie. Even some of the non-wood ones are quite expensive. So the sort of the metal, corrugated metal tank ones and what have you that you can buy commercially, they can be quite expensive as well. I mean, you can go for the simple option if you've got limited space and you're just wanting a wee bit of raised bed gardening. The good old black plastic recycled ones. So the places like Bunnings, Warehouse, Mitre 10 here in New Zealand all have their versions of now. Oh, and the Warehouse. So they've also got, all got that sort of thing. And, for 30, 40 bucks, you can get a smallish raised bed garden that's, sort of about that big. You can put any soil you want into it, but I would suggest not straight native dirt soil. It should be something with a good amount of organic matter in it. I'd stay away from buying the stuff off places like the commercial garden centres and or the big food box stores, so like Mitre 10, Bunnings and what have you. That's all really expensive. You can usually get sacks of good organic matter that's either a soil improver or similar from a landscape supplier. So that's what I do. I've got those big bags that you've seen me with, and I have used them for those planters. And that's the other thing that's really expensive about your big beds. So I was sitting beside one, but I'm moving around to try and stay in this shade at the moment. Is that when you're filling your raised beds, that can be really expensive when they're as high as my ones are. And a lot of people will use the hugelkultur that we talked about. Yes, I know I've mispronounced it again. But what you can also do is that you can put just like standard soil halfway in them, so halfway depth, and then put your really good stuff on. Now that's A, cheaper, and B, actually stops it sinking as much too, because the soil doesn't sink as much as the organic matter, the food, the soil conditioner stuff like I use, which is something called Super Grow. That will shrink. Oh look, we've got a visitor. He's not wanting to sit with me, it's too hot. He's just laying in the shade over there. It is hot. And I'm going to have to move again in a minute so I can try and keep the shade. No, he's come to visit, haven't you? I moved because I was starting to cook on top of my head, so I moved, so he's come to say hello to everyone. Haven't you, darling? Hey, right, well, we need to keep talking about raised beds. So one of the other disadvantages is watering. Okay, so we talked about the fact that they're good for lifting your plants out of the water and the drainage for them. However, they do drain quicker and they do need more watering than what your in-ground would probably need. So you've just got to be aware of that you know, they do take more water. So I briefly touched on materials. So we talked about my type of wooden ones, and we've talked about reclaimed ones using things like pellet wood. The other types that you can get are things like the metal ones, which you can buy online. I haven't seen them in like stores or anything like that, but one of the ones that seems to be good, and I've never had one, is a product called Birdie. So I can't say from my own experience it's been good, but the Aussie guy, I think is it Sustainability Me or something like that, he uses them exclusively, and he uses them for the reason that his place is in tropical Queensland and it floods. Not the whole property, but every time they have rain, it just stays soggy for weeks and months on end. So he's using them to get his growth out and out. I do see that you can buy them here, and I know that there is an American company that is selling them. And I think the Birdie brand is an Australian brand. And there are other places that do them. You can make them yourself using wood and corrugated iron and things like that. So you can make a wood frame and, do the corrugated iron type thing. The other ones that are quite popular now is, as I said, the Bunnings type black plastic, where you can get, and we've already talked about it, but there's also the Veggie Pod one, which is the one that has the lid and self-watering and what have you, which I gather are quite expensive. I've never used one. I'm not sure how good they are. They're apparently really a feature for things like if you've got reduced space, so like if you're in a townhouse or something like that, so you've just got a small backyard and you want to grow your salad stuff and things like that. Be good to hear if anyone's used them and what they think. Definitely pop that down in the comments. Other people I've seen online in different groups talking about making them out of the I think they call them cinder blocks, the white grey blocks that have the holes in there. and making them out of bricks and things like that, recycle bricks, not new ones. I'm not sure how good they are. I've never really used that sort of thing, but yeah, it would be good to hear if anyone's done them that way too. My big concern about some of those products, things like metal and even concrete blocks and things like that, or bricks, is how hot they get. So, if the roots get near there, and a heat like we've got today, do they get root burn and things like that? So that would be something that would be interesting to talk about at some stage if anyone's got any comments about that. So I think I've probably gone on long enough about raised beds. I am a fan of them. Yeah. They do have their place for people like me who are disabled, but they have a place for many, many other people for other reasons as well. The cost is a big con, and the length that they can last. So if you put the money in and buy something like macrocarpa, you get the more longevity out of them. But if your budget is smaller and you're using things like recycled products and what have you, you may get a lot less time out of them. If you're handy and you can build them and be creative with recycled products, that's awesome. As I said, dirt for them or soil is really expensive, but you may be lucky enough to be able to use the bottom layer of it, fill it with soil that you get locally for someone who's clearing a section or something like that. Just be wary of that sort of thing because you can bring weeds in and other things. But definitely you need a good 30 centimetres of good soil of some sort, whether it be compost, soil conditioner or what have you. They're not really something that you want to get up and dig if they're a good size one like my ones. So doing something like no dig works really, really well for them. And basically you can grow anything in them. I'll pop some photos up and what have you, because as I said, it's hot today and I'm hiding under a tree, my little tree, trying to get things. But yeah, I'll pop some photos up and you can have a look and see things like the size of them and what have you for my wooden ones. And of course you've seen my Bunnings black ones as well. So anyway, I hope that's been useful for the pros and cons of raised beds. I am a convert, so I'm probably a wee bit biased, but yeah, it is what it is. So yeah, if you've got any questions about raised beds, just pop them in the comments and I'll see if I can answer them for you. So it's Wednesday morning still. I've just staggered in from doing the recording around the raised beds. It's hot out there, so I'm now lurking in the garage. Now that it's December and we've got out most of the veggies that we want out in the garden, etc., it's time to really actually start thinking about succession sowing, which I probably should have done at least 2 weeks ago, but I've been a bit slack. So the other day I was lurking in here, I can't remember if it was hot or windy, but I did a whole lot of lettuce and I did some spinach and things like that, summer spinach. Just in case mine bolts. So I'm all sorted for that. But one of the things I do need to do is do some succession sowing for my spring onions. One of my big bads over the years has been to plant out my whole veggie bed and then realise I've got no room for succession planting, but I'm getting better at that. So if it's cooler later this week, I'll get in another row of peas, and my beans are still not up, so it's no point putting in any more beans. But with the spring onions, the ones that I've got in the garden, which we planted a few weeks back on the vlog, I am harvesting them now, so I need to actually get some more, and I should, as I said, done it a couple of weeks ago. So I've got some white Welsh spring onions, and I've got a couple of different packets, because I don't think there's much in this packet, of red ones, so spring crimson forest, and these are red bunching, which I think is a spring onion. So yeah, I need to get those in today, so that's what I'm about to do. that's a couple of trays of onions done. I've just done a sprinkle sow in those, and what I'll do is once they're a reasonable size, sort of about that size, I'll break them up and I will transplant them into 6 cells, so that they're in, like for each cell that there's 3 onions, and then I will do them as multi-sown in the garden. Yes, it's a bit more time consuming than just taking a row in the garden and sprinkling onions along, which I could do. But I just find that the multi-sown are easier for me because they just are. So, yeah. And you're not having to thin onions out from an actual row. So this is, and I like mucking around doing this sort of thing anyway, so yeah. Anyway, I am about to go and get a cold drink and chill for the rest of the day, and I will catch up with you again soon. Well, it's that time of week again that we have a coffee to chat, though I'm cheating today. I'm having a cold drink for the chat. It's just after lunch on Saturday, so I'm slightly out of my time thing again, but just sort of wanted to catch up and look at what we did this week. So we skipped back in time a wee bit and looked at the strawberry care, the summer strawberry care that I'd done the previous week that I couldn't fit into the last week's vlog because of the editing thing. So yeah, I'm trying to get the vlogs down to between 30 and 40 minutes long, maximum. But I'm not winning very well at the moment, but maybe this week. One of the other things we did was we had a long chat about the pros and cons of raised beds. As I said, I'm all for raised beds. I think they're great, but they're not for everyone. And you need to weigh up whether they work for you in your situation. Certainly for me, where I am, as far as soil's concerned, because I don't think I actually talked about the backyard soil, the soil here is loomy. It's when it is exposed from underneath the grass, it becomes very erosion prone. So when I put my raised beds in, rather than having them dug into the hill, and we're on a very slight slope here, I actually had them placed on top of, so that the wood was cut to fit the taper of the hill rather than them being dug in, because I didn't want them to become a point of where the soil would erode around them. So you need to look at what you've got soil wise. The front is claggy and clayey, the back is loomy and it just erodes. So for me, raised beds were good for that. It also gave me the soil quality I wanted, and it also gave me the thing that I needed as far as being able to do my gardening from a camp chair. If you have any questions around the raised beds, just pop them in the comments and I'll see if I can answer them for you. The last thing that we looked at this week was the need to get on with my succession sowing. So yeah, I'm a wee bit behind on my succession sowing. I probably should have started a good couple of weeks ago, maybe even more, early December, but I've started now and I'm back on. So one of the things that I'll definitely be doing between Christmas and New Year is actually getting my leeks in. Yeah, I know it sounds really early, but I winter my leeks over. They take a long time from when they are germinating through to getting to a decent size. So I always plant them around the Christmas, New Year period, and then I plant them in the garden to winter over early March, and that gives them the chance to actually establish and get a wee bit of growing going before the winter hits and their growth slows right down. So yeah, but I've got lettuce, onions, spinach, and a whole lot of other things that I've done succession sowing for in the last week or so. Now, one of the things that I said a few weeks back when I did my 25th, 26th vlog, the giveaways, that I wanted to do something again. So I have organised it. So what I have organised is a $50 Mitre 10 voucher, which I've purchased. no sponsorship from Mitre 10 at all, and I will announce how that is available next vlog. Now I'll run that from the next vlog, which is, I think, comes out on the 21st, through that week of Christmas, and then announce it in the Sunday between Christmas and New Year, who's the winner. But I've learnt quite a lot, so I'm around how to run it, so I will be putting out some reasonably detailed guidelines around that. Now, as always, I'm asking again, if you've got any friends, family or what have you that haven't subscribed yet, yep, it's all good. More subscriptions I get, the easier it is to keep up the watch hours and that. I am almost there with the watch hours, but I've still got a few to go before the monetisation is fully turned on. I've got everything else sorted, but it's just waiting for that. So for all those who have subscribed to date, thank you very much. You are really making a huge difference. Right, I'm going to leave it there now because I've got a whole lot of things that I need to do on the other side of the house and garden out the front and the greenhouse. I've got a couple of suggestions that people have made for the upcoming vlog, so I'm going to try and focus on those so that we get some good information for everyone. So wishing you a happy and safe week, and from me for now, bye.